everyone, my name is Trisha.
My name is Kelly.
I'm Daniel. I'm Maahir.
And today we're going to be learning about tornadoes and the weather. Alright, so to start us off, does anyone know what a tornado is? What is it?
I heard that it was something like really bad.
Yes, so do you know why it's bad to our environment?
It spins.
Spins? Alright, so we're going to watch a video on it and see why it's detrimental to our environment.
The weather is a funny thing. One day it can be sunny and warm, perfect day for sunglasses and flip-flops, but the next day it can be cold and rainy. Most of the time, the weather doesn't give us anything that we can't handle, with maybe some sunscreen or...
Alright, so that was just a quick video on tornadoes. So do you guys kind of understand it a little more than you did before?
A little bit.
Alright, so that's great. So it's just quick, tornadoes. We just want you guys to understand more about what they are, so you don't just think it's just random air or, as you guys said, dangerous. So I think, does it help explain why it's so dangerous, why some people might take precautions?
Yes.
Alright.
Alright, and then do you guys want to guess and see how many tornadoes there were in 2017?
I got the answer.
Alright.
1 million.
1 million. What about you, Jesse?
100.
100? So it's somewhere in between there, and it's 1,398 tornadoes.
See, I was close.
Yes, you were. So it says it cost the United States government over $5 billion in repairs for houses and buildings.
So yeah, there are a lot of tornadoes, and obviously not all of them are as powerful. You'll typically hear about the more powerful ones in the news. Most of them are very harmless. They're not that fast, but there are a couple every year that do cause a lot of damage.
So here, I'm going to show you where some tornadoes are common. And then the most common right here, like in the video they said down in the center, more of the south. Here is another picture just showing you what it's like, where it's a little more common, like around here and area.
So as you guys can see, there are no tornadoes in California. If there are, they're extremely rare and they very rarely happen. Typically, now most states have different natural disasters they have to worry about. As you guys know, California, what natural disaster do we have to worry about?
Fires.
That and earthquakes.
Yeah.
But tornadoes aren't that common in California, but as you can see, down that south, right here, where you can see it's red, it's actually called the Tornado Valley because people living in this area, they're told well in advance that this is where tornadoes can very commonly happen. Alright, so we just watched the video, so if you guys are paying attention, what type of weather do tornadoes occur in?
Oh, I know.
Do you know?
Cold air.
So that's a type of air, but that's not the weather. Do you know?
Warm weather.
Warm weather. So warm weather and cold weather are what cause a tornado, but in reality, it's actually thunderstorms. So tornadoes will only form when there is a thunderstorm present. If it's just a clear day, you're probably not going to see a tornado. So usually a thunderstorm during, as they said, in that spring to summertime, if there is a thunderstorm, people might already start taking precautions just to make sure. So one thing about tornadoes is, just like any kind of earthquake, you guys, there are there's a scale from 1 to 10. Just like that, there's a scale for tornadoes, and there are 5 different types, and we're just going to be going over that right now. So the first type is called an F0. So the speeds are below 73 miles per hour and is very light damage, some branches broken off trees, and is really not that deadly. This is the most common type of tornado in the United States. So out of that 1,398 tornadoes that hit the United States a year, most of them are these. They are, you're going to want to take precautions. You're obviously going to want to stay inside, but this isn't anything to evacuate. This isn't anything to take shelter for. It's just to take precautions. So this is what an F0 tornado would look like. Just kind of as they said, a rapidly spinning vortex of air. So the second one is an F1 tornado. Now, these are tornadoes that once you start getting into actual numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, this is when it's going to start getting a little more deadly. So the speeds on this are 73 to 112 miles per hour, and this is moderate damage. So in this case, if you hear that an F1 tornado is coming, you can either stay indoors, maybe take shelter, make sure all your doors are closed, but it's also not something you really have to worry about, because for the most part, you'll be fine as long as you're staying indoors and taking proper precautions. And you'll see right here, this is what it looks like. So you can see it's a little more wide. You can see how it's already, you can see the thunderstorm, but it's not going to cause that much damage. Now, when we start to see real damage is an F2 tornado. These are 113 to 157 miles per hour. At this case, this is when, depending on what state you live in, the state emergency services would either tell you to maybe leave the area or go into a storm shelter, because in this case, as you can see, there's going to be considerable damage. Roofs are going to be torn off. Mobile homes, which are fairly common in the South, can actually be almost picked up and demolished because of how fast this air is going. So you'll be able to see the picture that these are what F2 tornadoes look like. These are the tornadoes that you'll see when you hear about evacuation notices in the South. Have you guys ever had any family that's been involved in a tornado?
Yeah, my family in Texas, in Houston, they had a tornado there. They had to evacuate. It was
Right,
bad.
and chances are it was above an F2, because an F0 or F1 you're probably not going to have to evacuate for. So the next one is F3. These are severe. You're going to see 158 to 206 miles per hour, severe damage. Now, this is when proper constructed houses, meaning like the kind of houses that you and I live in, these are the types of houses that are going to be damaged. In this case, you can either go down to a storm shelter or evacuate. The thing about F3 tornadoes is they're not that common. The most common is an F0, F1, or F2. So F3, these are when it starts to get more deadly. However, there still are two more. As you can see, this is what a picture of an F3 looks like. It's much more deadly, much more wide, and can cause considerable amount of damage. Then you have F4. These are devastating. 207 to 260 miles per hour. For reference, when we had those really strong winds about a week ago, that was about 100 miles per hour. So imagine almost 2.5 times that. And in a certain location, that can cause considerable damage. And this, when it gets very dangerous, at this point, evacuations are almost needed. So instead of showing you a picture, I'm going to show you damage. This is what damage from F4 tornado can look like. So they are very deadly, and they are something that thankfully we Californians don't have to worry about, but this is a very real threat that a lot of people within that tornado range have to deal with almost every year. And then finally, we have an F5, 261 to 318. These are incredibly rare. They very rarely happen. They can really only happen during the very, the conditions have to be right, just right, and it's a very slim margin. So these will very rarely happen. And I believe the last F5 tornado was a couple of years ago. So it hasn't happened in a while. But if you want to see a picture of what it can do, this is an entire neighborhood that was just demolished by an F5 tornado. So these are, you are going to want to evacuate. A storm shelter isn't really going to help you. So we just wanted to go through those different types of tornadoes.
Okay, so to recap, how many tornadoes do you think there are in a year? Yes.
1,000, 300 something.
You are very close. The actual answer is 1,398.
Yes.
So now we're going to watch two videos of tornadoes in action. Okay, I want you to turn to your elbow partner, which would be you two, and tell each other what you think a tornado actually is. What did you learn from this lesson?
A tornado?
A water spout, if you think about it. So as we know, our Earth is covered by 70% water. And a tornado really happens when cold air meets hot air under a thunderstorm. So a water spout is really just a tornado that happens over the ocean. These happen all the time in various locations. They very rarely happen this close. But one thing that's interesting is that they actually happen more often than tornadoes. Just because if you think about it, because there's so much water around the United States, it happens, but they're actually not that deadly at all. And 98% of water spouts actually registers an F0. So they're not that serious, but we just thought it's really interesting. If you ever go to certain locations, if you go to the south, maybe Texas, you go to the coast, you might be able to see that there are water spouts forming, but they might also be farther out.
Okay, so guys, now it's project time, and we're gonna give you I messed up.
Oh my god.
No matter.
I can just keep going. Okay, so now it's project time, guys, and here are some of the materials you guys are gonna be using. You're using duct tape, you're gonna be using popsicle sticks, and you're gonna be using some cardboard and scissors. You guys are gonna build a house like down in the south, and it has to be structurally sound, and it has to be up to like their code of ours, since it's cardboard, and you guys will be making the project.
Yeah, and what we're gonna do is after you build it, we're gonna have a blow dryer in your base. We're gonna have a mock tornado to see if it can stand. We're gonna do low, medium, and high. So we're gonna have you build that, and then we're gonna test it.
Pretty good.
So now we're gonna go on high. You can see that it kind of does move a little bit. So usually what they do in the south is that they actually like add a lot of weight to it. Two is not that powerful, but it's still enough to, as you can see, kind of move the structure a little bit, but it's still staying structured.
Oh, that's gonna fly away.
And now do high.
Oh.
Wow. So this will probably survive in the sun.
See, I told you. Never mind, I didn't survive.
All right, thank you guys.